And then while you're doing that, if it takes a little bit of time, I can just go over something else real quick.
Sure.
So yeah, so you were passing through the doorway of time and you experienced a death and was swept away to a reunion of spirits from hundreds of your past lives. So many familiar souls that you saw. And you were handed a book and said that you must return because your destiny awaits. And the title was Red Jacket Reunion.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
And looking around, you felt the timeless nature of existence, because that's what we were just talking about, right?
Yes.
Timeless nature of existence, of true existence. And the contents of the book held your future. You needed to fulfill the contents to return to this place. Emmanuel opened it, and here's what I said earlier, is hundreds of contracts of souls that you must aid fell into your lap. And then you were told you'd be a seed through which knowledge moves, and that you are to teach ascension in this lifetime, the marriage of spirit and matter.
Yes.
But I don't know if that Five Realms quote came up. Doesn't matter.
Oh, it did.
All right,
Yep.
go ahead, if you don't mind.
Here. So from the three Pure Land Sutras, from the larger sutra, it's between heaven and earth. The five realms are clearly distinguishable. They are vast and deep, extending boundlessly. In return for good or evil deeds, happiness or misery ensues. The result of one's karma must be borne by oneself alone, and no one else can take one's place. This is the natural law. Misfortune follows evil deeds as their retribution, which is impossible to avoid.
Can we go into the House of Mysteries?
We may.
And anything you'd like to say about that? Now, it does get into entanglements, which we just addressed, but.
Yeah, the House of the Mysteries was a really interesting experience because, I think it started out, I'm trying, correct me if I don't have it open here,
Yeah.
but just remembering it starts out where I know that Andy and I were in this experience together, and we were taken in to see a lot of elements from our childhood at first. And then after going through some kind of initiation with those things, like I know there was a tricycle from my childhood and some other things, then we were thrust into this almost like a maze. It was very interesting. Let me see if I can pull that up too. Okay, so yeah, going through the tiny ribbed cage tunnel, and then as soon as you go in, it starts to shrink. Oh, the House of the Mysteries? Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, I was in the wrong one.
Yeah, I thought you were, because you were getting into the maze. And
I was getting into something else. I was thinking of this other one, which was totally different. Sorry.
well, I put on the House of Mysteries and Seeing Eden. And the original
Yes.
sin is not the sins of Adam and Eve, but our own, and that we have been born into via our entanglements and past lives.
Yes.
Original sin is karma, the root of all sins.
Yeah, that's what original sin. And in fact, there's later a description that I wrote somewhere explaining that, but I guess we'll get to that when we get there. But yeah, the House of the Mysteries went through the cavernous tunnel. You go through this cornfield, but then the House of the Mysteries is like this cave that opens in the middle of the sky. And there's like a placard on it that says words on it, and you can't really read all the words because it's just there's a whole bunch of words on it and you can't see it all, but it's this House of the Mysteries as well. And then you go up towards it, but then all of a sudden you're going through this tubular tunnel and you're going down like in circular fashion, and then you enter into the Garden of Eden. It was really beautiful. It was a lot of green, actually. I remember thinking that there was a lot more green there than I expected. I expected there to be more flowery colors and things, but there was a lot of green.
Well, green's kind of the heart too, right?
That's a good point. Yeah. You get these bodies of energy that enter into you in these initiations and stuff. And that's what happened here in the Garden of Eden. And this is the first thrust about original sin, which is that original sin is karma. and that it's not the sin of Adam and Eve, but our own sin, and how the sins of the fathers and the mothers are visited upon us is different. It has to do with the actions of our fathers and mothers that we then take on ourselves.
That we
So we
embrace.
have the ability to choose, what we will take on in terms of habits and things that we pick up from our parents.
And then parents are chosen because of the knowledge they can impart for the soul. And sometimes they teach virtue, sometimes vice.
Yes. And here I had written that original sin is the sum of our own actions which follow us as we journey the repetitious cycle of transmigration. Original sin is karma, represented symbolically in the story of Adam and Eve by their failure to obey God. This sin is the root of all sin, which is the essence of karma. And yes, exactly, which is obedience, and in all the religions, obedience is something that is given great merit. And the reason for it is because it is by obedience that we are able and become conformable to the will of God. And we are able to learn through obedience. So let's say, for instance, I'm going to give you an example because people are really hesitant and resistant to obedience in today's day and age. And part of the reason for it is that we don't want blind obedience. We don't want to just do what people tell us. And again, we go back to this karmic issue of duty becoming mass slaughter, right? But obedience is not meant in that matter. It's not meant as blind obedience. But when you talk about obedience to legitimate authority, and so in terms of legitimate spiritual authority, so let's say we're talking about like a nun who follows her mother's superior, who follows the director of the order, and then who follows the Pope. We'll just go with the Catholic Church for right now, but every one of these religions has an order of authority. And each of these people who are placed in these positions are meant to be given a certain amount of obedience because they've been entrusted because of their training and their many years of experience in their training, whether it's Judaism, Hinduism, Buddhism, whatever. It could be Native American religion too. That's how they have the various levels of who's to be listened to, the shaman and the grandmothers and the grandfathers. It's all about respecting the experience and knowledge of those who have gone before. It's having respect for the elders. When we choose that, no, I have to go with what I think no matter what happens? We go much slower because of the reasons that you pointed out just a little bit ago, which is, first of all, I was unable to see the damage that me just loving this person could do to his life and his destiny. I was not able to see that. Now, let's say if my soul in that lifetime was acting under obedience to a legitimate spiritual authority who instructed me, I know you don't yet understand this, but your love puts that man's family and his destiny at risk. And I am advising you through obedience that you must retract and you must withdraw. And if I had the wisdom to say, I don't understand it yet, it doesn't make sense to me yet, but I understand that you are smarter than me. And you're probably right, even though right now I don't think you're right. But I'm going to obey this order on the fact that I believe that you are my superior, and I'm giving you that benefit of the doubt because you're my superior, you're spiritually superior. And if they had done that, then there would have been an actual purification underway, a cultivation of the soul. You see? So like, for instance, if you disagree with something that the Catholic Church might teach, but yet let's say Pope John Paul II has made some kind of encyclical on it, and it disagrees with your own view. If you're humble enough, you might say, well, Pope John Paul II is a saint and he was right about most things. So I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt that he might be right on this one, right? And so by obedience, I'm going to assume he's probably right. And I'm going to go with that while I study my way to understanding the issue and why that's the case. And then if I discover otherwise, then I can deal with it, right? So the issue of obedience is really important, because when you have a society where the lowest level is not obeying any kind of authority, and they just make decisions based on their ignorance down here, you have chaos.
Yeah.
And you don't have cultivation.
And then to have discernment whether or not that authority is coming from the right place or not. If they have a track record that they can show, and if they're doing things, the authority that is not like in alignment with, let's say, higher spiritual values, then I'd probably say take a hike to the authority, you know?
Yes, but I don't think you're fully understanding what obedience as a virtue would mean, because you're not understanding where this obedience would come from. So let's say you chose to become a monk.
Okay.
You wouldn't be able to become a monk unless you fully understood that obedience to a proper authority, such as the superior over the monks, would actually have value for you. If you think that that's not valuable to you, then you should never be a monk.
Right.
But for those who become the monks, they believe and they know that there's a value in that, whether they're Catholic monks, Buddhist monks, Hindu monks, or, there's all kinds of monks. This is a very important precept. It's a very important precept. And it's very important that it's made properly here, because it's something that is lost in today's society, that obedience to a proper authority, a proper spiritual authority, and the same precept applies to proper lawful authority. Unfortunately, we do have a lot of crazy stuff going on in our society right now, where there's a lot of improper authority in that regard. So we won't even go there. But as relates to proper spiritual authority, if you don't have that kind of a hierarchy where people can be instructed, then there will be very little progress made, because you have literally beginners teaching themselves, and they don't know how to do that. You see, and this even applies in out-of-body travel, because when you are experiencing out-of-body travel, you have to learn to be obedient to the higher authorities that present themselves to you. And if you choose to ignore the corrections or the direction that is received, you just won't receive it anymore. You see? Yep. And so there is the same hierarchy applies in the spiritual training that we will receive. But if we believe we know better, we will not receive that guidance any further. That's how it works. It's important, Brian. It's really important. And that's why the law of obedience is universal across all of the ancient sacred texts, across all religious studies, including the tribal cultures. It's understanding that. And that's why the humility, if you do not have that humility, you cannot be taught. And part of the reason they wanted me to know that I was that horrible tyrannical ruler was because they wanted to knock me down to that humility, so that I would be receptive to realizing I needed to be taught, and I needed to respond to obedience and to obey legitimate authority as I was being taught, and that I was not the authority. And that was absolutely vital. And it's vital to every single one of us, because none of us is able to get through the purification and cultivation process alone. We don't do it alone. We help each other.
Good point.
But the biggest obstacle, and it has to be made, the biggest obstacle to progress, to real, legitimate, authentic progress for every single soul is ego and pride. It's that wall that people put up. They don't want to go past themselves as the final authority. And when you're there, you will not progress.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that because I listened to this audiobook recently from this author that I really respect. He's very good, very, very good at just documenting everything. But he came to this one concept that was exactly what you're talking about. And I didn't vibe with what he said, but he said like when he realized like there was a hierarchy, so to speak, then he's just like, I'm out. It's like, well, I was thinking like, there's people who are not necessarily more qualified, but are just have more consciousness than you. You're not like the end all of awareness and consciousness and, universality and eternal wisdom. So yeah, I understand. It's very important that we can step outside of our knowingness and our limited knowingness to see that there's much greater wisdom.
Well, and you see how that even goes back to where we started when we were talking about the soul that stands at the beginning. And if they're unable to just receive those instructions because the ego or the pride, and sometimes just the self mutilation of, I just suck too much. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's the same thing. And so it's like, okay, there's a hierarchy. I'm out. Well, what's that mean for him? He's here. He's here.
It's like when you would go to lower
here.
realms to help people and you'd try to just give them a little like, hey, see that door? See the light there? Yeah, just go. And then it's like, what? Like, I'm not gonna listen to you. It's dumb. Right? It's kind of like,
well, that's what's going to happen. And that's the tragedy of it. And the reality is, no matter where you are in the path, it doesn't matter. You need help. I need help. And if you think you don't, you are stuck.
we can only go so far.
Yeah.
If we're trying to do it ourselves and like, okay, we can help ourselves a ton, but there's going to come a time where we're going to need, if we want to go to the next levels, that we're going to have to seek outside ourselves.
Yeah. Well,
Now,
yes, it's very important to realize this, because this is the nature. See, as long as you seek, you will find. But when you refuse to ask, and the door shall be open to you, right? But if you refuse that from the servants of heaven, those who come to assist, if you don't get it, that, yeah, there's a hierarchy and you have to receive from that hierarchy if you want to make any progress. Wow. I mean, wow.
yeah, it makes me feel like I'm just I'm at step one.
Well, aren't we
Step one.
We're all at step one because we're here. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So no matter where we are here, we're pretty much at step one. And
I'm okay with that.
I will take whatever help God sends.
Yeah, ditto. Now, the next thing you're talking about is the mysteries of the Ark, the key to crossing the ages. It's linked to reincarnation. And I wonder if you would address that. Pyramidal elements appeared forming a vortex, the link to a successful existence.
That one is pretty hard to describe. I'll go ahead and read this. I was initiated into the mysteries of the Ark, having to do with Noah's Ark, which is the key to crossing the ages and is linked to reincarnation. Pyramidal elements appear, like these triangular things, and they form a vortex, and they place the soul upon the Ark to find its successive link of existence. It's very complex, and it's impossible to describe. It's very energetic. I watched the mystical process of a soul reincarnating into another lifetime. And so the Ark has to do with the soul being able to find its way through. If you think of these triangular cubes, not one-dimensional, but cubical triangles, literally hundreds, thousands of them, like blocking across a mystical sky. And each one of these triangular cubes being the embodiment of the energy of one single lifetime of knowledge for a soul. And you see the light of this soul moving through this lifetime and trying to find its way to the next link in existence. And I was shown how the soul meanders through this link of existence from one link to the next, and how the soul figures out which one it's going to link up with, because it's not a straight line. It's meandering in different directions all throughout time and eternity. It was fascinating to watch, impossible to describe. It's very energetic. When I mentioned before that I don't write down probably 99% of the things that I see now, it's because it's impossible to put them in words. There is so much that goes on that is beyond our ability to even comprehend words wise. And when somebody asks me, well, what did you see? It's like I literally I don't know what to say.
Now, chapter 3 is karma hits the ground, 7 elements, which are interesting instead of 4 elements. The 7 elements: Spinoza, Lao Tzu, path to the angel's twilight, difference between karmic and eternal, and the book of the angels. So there was, the sky filled with faces, all yours, a panoramic display of your many lifetimes on earth. And you had knowledge of each lifetime, like it all entered you at the same time. Do you remember this?
Mm-hmm.
And what do you have to say with it? I mean, there's quite a bit more to it than that, but just that aspect of it, of the panoramic display of your many lifetimes and you having energetic knowledge of those different lifetimes. And that's very mind-blowing.
Let me just make sure I'm thinking of the same experience.
Well, the sky filled with Palladian spaceships.
Yep, that's it. Yeah, it was amazing. It was just this beautiful mystical panorama. It was like I was standing on this precipice that was coming up from the earth. And literally, it's so hard to even put into words how these things were just all around me.
Mm-hmm.
The energy of these lifetimes. And it was like all these personalities were coming into me. All of the knowledge of these personalities and lifetimes. The Pleiadian ships were everywhere. And then my higher self was coming into me. And she appears, that's at that time, she's in the, since that time, she's appeared in a myriad of other ways. But at that time, she appeared as this old lady with a, gray haired bun that she had behind her head. And she was coming in. Mother ship pulls up at the top. It's like the culmination of the reincarnation journey where everything is coming together. It was just a massive, energetic, beautiful display. It was the culmination of the initiations as well. And then I was taken through this luminous tunnel into the earth, back to the earth, where I was to take this knowledge of all these lifetimes and then make good use of it, I guess, and I know that the reunion was to come, and then I was to take that knowledge, hopefully do better this time. It was just so beautiful. It was just so amazing. It was such a beautiful.
How do you process all that? I can only process like one thing at a time. Hundreds of things I'd be like, what?
It was really awesome. I always loved seeing the Pleiadians and the Pleiadian ships, and they had the little blue thing underneath the saucer. They were silver-shaped saucers with the blue thing underneath. The saucer part underneath was blue, a blue light thing. And then the big mothership came in, which was cool because the mothership didn't come in that often. So the mothership came in, it was always special. And
the Pleiadians kind of look like us, don't they?
Yeah, they do, except that they're lighted. They're much more lighted, like lighted beings, lighted versions of us. much
Have
more.
you ever had a experience where you were aware that you were having a past life and you had a different body that was other than human?
I do think I've had that, yes. Unfortunately, I couldn't tell you what species I was in terms of extraterrestrial because they were like different kinds of bodies that I haven't heard people make mention of in terms of extraterrestrials we've heard of here.
Hmm.
Yes, I would imagine basically that there's as many extra of other types of life as we can possibly imagine because it's a vast universe and there's probably
Yeah.
other kinds of life that we wouldn't recognize immediately because we think only in terms of life that is according to what we require for life, whereas there are planets too that have different life requirements. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Yeah, what makes life would be different. I don't know exactly what it would be, but
Hmm.
they're not going to have the same bodies that we have, and so they may process different things. I don't know if they need H2O or if they need something else, or you know what I mean? So all the things that we look for to support life might be very different for them. So we have all the worlds that we know of that could support life according to what we know, and then there's also other kinds of life that we don't know.
So like there's other life on the planets just in this solar system?
In
Like,
that regard, I don't know. In terms of, we do know, well, I do know that there's life on those other planets in the spiritual worlds for
hmm.
sure. So in, fifth dimensional and upward worlds, there is life on those planets. Just in terms of in the physical sense, probably not, but in the spiritual sense, absolutely yes.
Hmm.
So, there's all these different dimensional levels of, well, which level are we talking about when we talking about life? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Now you go on, you talk about the seven elements. So the four elements that we're aware of, and then three more. Could you
Yeah,
speak to that a little bit?
sure. Yeah, the elements.
Essence, karmic memory, and spiritual ether.
Yes. Yeah. So I was shown that I'd gone through this initiation during the rites of passage and stuff where I met the four elementals, and they had returned to me later to make me aware of the process of rebirth, reincarnation. And they showed me that there were three more elementals, and they were essence, karmic memory, and spiritual ether. And so, fire, earth, water, and air were the elementals of the earth, and the karmic memory, spiritual ether, and essence were those that served the function of karmic rebirth. And so essence created astral fragments. Karmic memory stores karmic data, so literally stores our past life memories and the cellular memories of the earth and all that kind of stuff. And spiritual ether blends matter with spirit to create rebirth. And so again, it's the essence, karmic memory, and spiritual ether. These were really important. The way it was presented to me was that they're the choreographers of earthly existence. It was a very cool experience. I'm trying to think how to make this like visual for people, with essence creating astral fragments. So think about these multiplicities. That's what they do. They create the fragments. Karmic memory has all the memories. So it's not just the memories of individual souls and individual lifetimes, it's the memories of the earth. So all the events that have occurred on the earth are stored in karmic memory. And spiritual ether is the substance through which souls are actually reincarnated. So they work all together. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's to teach of the process of death and rebirth,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
function of karmic rebirth.
Yep.